Sony, 5 PlayStations, 3 burned out plasma TVs, and the maker of the Walkman, a device only listened to by people that are too high and mighty to download Spotify, or people who like the Guardians movie.
I ain't never heard of Uzi.
Sony has always been lurking in the shadows in my life, with me owning not just one of their little devices, but a whole bunch of them. PSPs that allowed me to play Wall-E in some of the lowest quality action gameplay, and hide under the covers to play GTA Vice City Stories, because who would have thought it? My parents did not want me killing prostitutes in Miami.
One prostitute, 2 prostitutes.
Owning PlayStations that immersed me in the lore of being an abusive father, raising a boy in Nordic fairy tales.
Boy? You're a boy, aren't you?
And narratives about a sweet man traversing the wastelands of Ohio. Now, don't get me wrong, Sony's good, okay? It's got a leg up on Microsoft when it comes to gaming, and over the years it has retained many exclusive gaming titles like mentioned. But it does have one big looming problem, or it did. Before the elephant in the room, and yes, I will talk about it, Sony was struggling majorly in its animation department. Because, yeah, They were pretty bad. Sure, you know it's difficult for an animation studio to shine when you're pitted against the likes of PIXAR and Dreamworks, but there is no excuse for a 1 hour and 26-minute film about iPhone emojis where James Corden plays the role of a fucking hand.
That had better not be my leftover Chinese food.
And having Hollywood Hall of Famer Patrick Stewart playing actual shit in the movie. Like, that is so fucking disrespectful. And there's no harm with thinking outside the box as well, okay? Sony had good endeavors prior to the Emoji Movie in 2017. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was actual peak, and still has animation and colours that still look as amazing as they did back in 2009. And even Pirates was a breath of fresh air, using the fundamentals of stop motion to be made. Sony had shown itself that it was able to innovate and switch up the game when necessary to create a unique viewing experience for children and adults alike.
I mean, it's not bad. It kind of tastes like chicken.
Or, well, it had.
That means you're just like me.
Because before this, we had this, and this again, and this for the 3rd time.
Up your...
And then we had, I don't know what that is.
No cap. Shit.
The boys at Sony ripped off the Bible. Real men fucked with my boys over at the barnyard. Like when Sony had hit roadblocks before in the film industry, their spidey sense was, I mean their big cash money sense was tingling all about, and they saw a great opportunity in Spider-Man. Sony had previously hit the jackpot by capitalizing on the superhero market, not just making 1 or 2 live-action Spider-Man films, but 8 and still counting, along with owning the rights to games that have finally made their way onto the Steam store. Peter Parker's story was now not just being told to a bunch of comic book nerds, but now red-pilling a whole generation of kids who took them to the cinema. As a kid born in 2003, Spider-Man was huge and dominated toys, games, and even TV, with shows like The Spectacular Spider-Man, where he was indeed spectacular. The character of Spider-Man was everywhere, and all I'd ever known as a kid, the hard-ass Spider-Man 3 posters where they took an actual photo of me after watching a real TikTok and having a cold shower.
I'm so cold that I'm
I even saw Garfield on my birthday in 2014. And no, not that one. You know, the one with Jamie Foxx. You know, the guy from the Slow Jam song. Look how unchained Django is in this movie. Someone ought to put his chains back on him. No, you can't say that. They paid Jamie Foxx to play a character called Fuck It, we gotta go bald. I even played both Amazing Spider-Man games, and they were both dog shit. But I was a kid, so I thought, you know, this was actually Spider-Man and not like from fucking Shanghai. Like, holy shit, this is like Wuhan market gameplay and not a next generation console game.
Stealing them blind.
Spider-Man has always had a special place in my heart because he's been far more relatable than any other superhero I grew up with. He wasn't some rich billionaire who built a suit made of iron, or a World War II soldier juiced up on enough Tren and gym TikToks.
Before you slam your meat between her hips, your arms better be fucking swole.
To kill an influencer. Also, no way this dude, living, you know, in the 1940s, would be cutting around with the Falcon.
See, I got business associates who are black, and they don't want my son with their daughters, and I don't want their sons with mine.
Just saying. Peter was cool because he was just a kid from humbling beginnings. And Sony cooked with the acquisition of Spider-Man, as it not only made for great entertainment, but also a big fat bag on their plate. Sony's highest grossing film is to come from Spider-Man, with No Way Home making almost $2 billion at the box office. And out of the top 10 Sony grossing films, 5 are Spider-Man films, alongside a Venom film.
What the hell are you?
Boy, this is worse than the time I was sus.
And they achieved these big numbers without having a cast consisting of Dwayne The Rock, Kevin Hart, and Jack Black.
Kind of sexy though in a weird way.
Which was the only reason Sony banked $900K from Jumanji, because I have no explanation how, any other how. When they were looking to who could save their animation studio, it was obvious. The household name, the biggest superhero in the game, the friendly neighborhood spider, Peter Parker. Huh? Go on. What? He's black?
Hey, yeah, I wanna shoot, baby.
While most in 2018 were cranking 90s and mourning over the death of our beloved XXXTentacion, I was getting excited to watch the brand new animated Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man Into the Spider... it's bullshit. No one watched Spider-Verse when it came out. Well, people did, but not enough as you'd expect. Despite having the big Spider-Man name, Sony only pulled in $380 million, which may sound like a whole lot of cheddar, but when you compare it to other Spider-Man films and other popular animation, it's not a whole lot of green. Sony ain't no Pixar, but Spider-Man ain't no joke. The movie should have done better, but it wasn't awful. Sony's budget was just $90 million, and profit is profit. It would only be after theaters when Spider-Verse would get its recognition, winning 81 awards, including an Oscar.
I just want an Oscar.
Keep my wife's name.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse added new life into the superhero genre, a new animated take on our favorite superhero. Peter Parker is cool and all, but Miles, fucking Jordans? Bro has the 98.5 Chicago Reds, and I know damn well that some New York cop ain't pulling home that bank. Miles is running down Brooklyn with a pair of fucking 24 grand shoes. Nerdy Peter Parker could fucking never. That being said, I don't think Peter Parker was ever this bad speaking of women. Like, holy shit, what's his name? Shamik Moore? He did a good job in the movie, but what is he doing, man?
Closer to Haley. Miles flirting with Gwen when I'm looking at Haley.
Where once stood a white guy named Peter, who moved with the swagger of a white teen, is now Miles Morales, a 13-year-old who moved with the swagger of a black teen.
Full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
Whilst bashing out Post Malone tunes on his Sony-sponsored headset. God knows how they actually dragged Post Malone out of bed to record this, but, you know, Miles seems to be enjoying himself. Miles offered way more in terms of relatability than Peter did for me, because Miles wasn't particularly the most nerdy kid. Where Tobey Maguire was extremely nerdy and Tom Holland wouldn't shut the fuck up about the Stark internship, Miles stood in contrast, having an element of his creative side shown throughout the film, with him drawing Twitter commissions within the opening scene.
Somebody farted.
Or even when he and his uncle went on that side quest to deface the streets of New York. The scene at school where Miles deliberately fails his test answers because he's not up for the new challenge of a different school that he didn't feel like he belonged in was a really human moment about having great expectations and family pressure to succeed. And that was really cool to see. I don't mention Andrew Garfield in this because he was probably the most literally me Spider-Man of them all. Like, look how cold his fucking suit is. And look, he skateboards. He can't be a loser. He wears 420 bucket hats and smokes weed. What made Garfield a good Spider-Man was that he felt like the average teenager with still the same principles that make Spider-Man Spider-Man. I mean, I too would rather say one-liners while terrorists are killing civilians.
You help a lot of poor people. I just thought you was gonna be black.
Okay, I don't know who the fuck made that. The first Spider-Verse movie is aware of itself that it has so many movies prior that it doesn't bother milking origin stories. It wasn't trying to be The Amazing Spider-Man or Sam Raimi's or an extension of what the MCU had been working on, but in fact carves its own path and establishes itself as a brand new Spider-Man experience. And if you watch the movie, there's no denying it achieved that. The choice to have the movie centered around a multitude of different Spider-Men allowed it to have such a great edge over the other movies. Where only one iteration of Spider-Man existed, Spider-Verse had tens of them, with the plot circling around 6 of them. Sony's acquisition in '99 brought a whole new audience.
Come on, Dad, let's go.
People like me, like you, that may not have read comic books. I don't have a clue about this black and white Spider-Man because I don't read the comics, but he was so cool to have in the movie. Or a fucking Looney Tunes pig. Or how about the main love interest being another Spider-Man named Gwen? Sorry, Spider-Woman. A character who would cause many obese men to set fire to their hard drives. This movie brought together so many elements from the comic books that was what made Spider-Man, and that's super cool to see. I've watched enough Spider-Man movies at this point, and I do like them, but the formula is going to get stale, and when you take risks and switch up the game, revolutionize the genre, you get moments like Spider-Verse, with incredible shots, characters, and storytelling, and love, praise, and appreciation received that will force the studio's hand in creating a sequel, even better than the first. Across the Spider-Verse might be my favorite animated film of all time, and the story hasn't even ended yet. Building on the foundations of the first movie, it takes there's a whole lot of Spider-Mans to a whole nother level.
Spider-Man. Miles, the black one!
Fleshing out more character stories, relighting old flames, and giving Miles responsibilities now he's the big age of 15, because instead of eyes glued onto brazzers and wearing reps, he was out saving the universe in this one. And I don't know, just drawing a little bit of deviant art about Gwen Stacy. It's nothing, ignore that. The opening of the movie follows Gwen's origin story and why she behaves the way she does, learning that she lost her own Spider-Man, explaining her fear of losing Miles if they got together, and also witnessing her relationship with her father, a big white man who, when he's not racially profiling cartoons,
Hands in the air! Police brutality! Police brutality!
is talking some mad shit about Spider-Woman. The new characters introduced were peak as well, and the movie did a really good job at making me give a shit about everyone in it, which I don't think I felt that way about anything apart from maybe The Sopranos. Actually, fuck Vito.
He should fucking die.
In this film, we're introduced to a new Spider-Man, who is the secondary antagonist, Miguel O'Hara, based off the Spider-Man 2099 comics and featured in the Edge of Time game. We see him take on his traumatic experience on his gaming monitor as he tries to inflict his own misfortunes onto the rest of the Spider-Man. I don't care if it's a canon event, Miguel O'Hara. I'm not sucking your cock.
Suck our cock.
Is this a canon event? Is this event canon?
Also, he has one of the hardest walks I've ever seen. Even the depiction of a Just Stop Oil protester was really cool to see, even if he was incredibly fucking annoying.
Antagonizing fascists, staging unpermitted political actions.
Up yours, woke moralist.
I'm not coping, by the way, just because women find him hot.
But he's so hot.
Get back in the kitchen, woman. Across the Spider-Verse even tops the previous one's soundtrack, with Metro Boomin making it fucking boom. It's got Lil Wayne on it, rhyming words like Weezy Carter with Peter Parker, and ASAP explaining to me how my rich friends and my broke friends coexist.
I love you guys.
Headway here. I didn't mean to say what you meant, cocksucker.
And Nas making a song called Nas Morales, where he informs us that Miles' job is to defend the towers. Does he now? Okay, maybe it's a bit on the nose, you know, to have the black Spider-Man like black music. I don't remember Coldplay being on the soundtrack or the fucking Arctic Monkeys when the white Spider-Man were up.
We don't want a teenage mutant.
I don't care if it's stereotypical that Spider-Man indulges in a bit of black culture by having a soundtrack of trap music and 808s. It's pretty cool, and I like that type of music. It brings more life into the world we're viewing. No one is walking down the road listening to this shit. We're blasting Yeet and Destroy Lonely. I'm not some basement dweller who thinks Miles isn't Spider-Man because his skin color is just a little black for my taste. Those people aren't even the funny old guy type of racist.
The fucking jigaboo cocksucking.
They're the I scroll 4chan and behead women kind of racist. Miles is really good and a really good Spider-Man, and everything about this film has been nailed down, all the way from the characters to the story, the music, and how could I forget Sony's Game 7 clutch, the animation. When creating an animated film or TV show, it's crucial that the animators are able to bring these characters and story to life. Live action stuff will always have an upper hand when it comes to connecting with real people. You see a fat Italian mobster saying racial slurs and you point at the screen going, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. Even mixing in CGI animals can have the same effects, finding moments of relatability with a talking raccoon whose best friend is a talking tree played by Vin Diesel.
Yeah! Family.
If done correctly though, the animation story goes together nicely like a big movie sandwich, and you have movies like Finding Nemo, following the story of Marlin, a protective parent who's lost everything, riding on his last hope of finding his only son in the deep blue sea. But look, the fish graphics, they've got fucking ray tracing on the water. Spider-Verse's animation is gorgeous. I think anyone with half a brain can see that. But why is it so goddamn good? Well, it's thanks to these guys right here, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who have not only just been a part of an amazing Spider-Man film, but been the creative minds behind a fresh vision of animation. Back in 2009, where older brothers were screaming on Modern Warfare 2, and your parents were getting separated due to the financial crisis.
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead!
Hello, are you my family?
Little me was getting excited for a film about meatballs falling from the sky. Or if you were an adult, an economy that collapses. I'm not surprised my parents weren't too thrilled walking out of the cinema that year. Cloudy was a really fun film, with the animations benefiting it greatly, and big credit to Phil and Chris for cooking this one. And as a result, in 2014, they scored the job with Warner Brothers, who wanted to make the Lego movie.
Cover your butt.
Adaptations of things rarely go well. Sometimes there's a diamond in the rough like The Last of Us, and as of recent, there's been a fair good and passable ones, but most of the time, it's slop, and more slop. The Lego movie was awesome. I mean, let's put aside that Chris Pratt actually nailed the lead in this film, and Lego managed to predict what a woman would look like in Joe Biden's America. But the animation was so cool. The way they utilized stop motion to create the film was so interesting because, yes, Lego characters do move like that in real life. Films which divert from traditional routes of animation add a new color and fresh air to the genre that's always been needed when you need to push people to the cinema. Okay, maybe you didn't need that much of a push in 2014 to get people into the cinema, but now you've literally got to put a leash on people or take them as hostage. Animated films have always had an issue of looking samey, and that is okay, I guess, but it misses what's needed for it to stand out from the rest, and I'll touch on that later because yes, I will be getting to you. And when you combine that with an amazing story, deep message about creative liberty that is even more relevant today, you make something really special. Even combining real life Lego into the film and dialogue scenes that would later find themselves onto TikTok.
You don't have to be the bad guy.
That is when you know you've made it as a film. The Lego Movie was a huge win for Warner Brothers, raking in $460 million from just a $65 million budget. And it's probably why they decided to make a Batman spin-off movie, and another Lego movie, and even a video game that I owned as a kid and played on the PS4. Sony saw dollar signs, and being in the creative rut it was in, they picked up the phone and they started dialing. I don't know how this movie was on a budget of $90 million, and this is $100 million. Actually, I do know, because this was the actual fucking take-home pay of an animator.
Get back to work.
Spider-Verse's animation is actually the best looking animated film I've ever seen, and that's saying something. It was evidence that each area had been clearly well thought out and over-analysed before making those decisions, and it reflects on the finished product. Apparently for Across the Spider-Verse, the Hobie character had its own dedicated team that took 3 years to finalise his animation, and all it costed was them not seeing their family. And you can tell that by just how he fits into the world, with the art style staying in line with the Spider-Punk comics he's meant to represent. Even just the basis of the film itself, rather than going down the traditional PIXAR semi-realistic big-eyed 3D characters, they decided to go with 2D, which gives more creativity to explore the realms of cartoons, mangas, and evidently comic books. Some of the coolest sequences in other animated media are when they've combined different visual styles, and there's huge reasons why Spider-Verse, a movie predominantly surrounded by action, would take a more illustrative approach, like anime does with the big shows like Attack on Titan, renowned for their fight sequences, and now Spider-Verse can join that list because they're really good and awesome to watch. Decisions made about the frame rates of the movie also allowed the comic book style to become alive. By lowering the frame rate, it pushed the idea that this is a 2D movie and mimicked the way that, yeah, a comic book is a collection of pictures demonstrating a story. They also had moments where different people would be running at different frame rates to emphasize who they were as a character. In the first movie, Miles swings at a lowered frame rate to Peter to showcase he's less skilled than him. They also used a method called smearing to emphasize character movement, which was pioneered in older animated media. And since they were using no motion blur and no depth of field, because the animators are true gamers, techniques like color separation was used to suffice. The same effect used in a Mr. fucking Beast video.
Jimmy!
Spider-Verse completely revolutionized animated movies and paved the way for other studios to pull themselves out of the grave. Dreamwork, who had been releasing shit after shit and Boss Baby after Boss Baby. No! And a Trolls movie.
Not! Why won't you sing?
Because singing killed my grandma, okay?
Puss and Boobs raised like a phoenix out of the ashes, using their knowledge of what made Spider-Verse such a breath of fresh air, and reshuffled their cards to create an incredible sequel to the first movie. Obviously inspired by Sony, but yet adding their own creative touch, using washed out watercolor drawings, which fitted the old Spanish setting of the film. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish had the same budget as the first Spider-Verse movie, and yet made even more dough, and was the 10th highest grossing film of 2022. It was even better than the first one, and that was hard to top because a girl literally pissed herself when I watched it in school. I did too piss my pants when Humpty Dumpty sat on that wall. Dreamworks proved that shaking up the formula and riding a new wave of animation could be beneficial to reigniting a flame that had been dimmed for so long. Okay, in fairness, The Bad Guys was apparently good, but I am yet to watch that. I mean, it looks like Nickelodeon have finally gotten their shit together as well, because I had no idea what they've been doing since Rango. Just flop, 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 flop. Wow, what a surprise. A film about monster trucks lost them $115 million. But finally things are on the up because the new TMNT movie actually looks really fun. And after multiple failed attempts of making live action movies and paying Megan Fox to hang around sewer people, I mean, she did that at Comic-Con, to be fair. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles finally looks like it's about to get a decent film. And it's all thanks to Phil Lord and Chris Miller for shaking up the animation scene, running it back to its roots, and providing finally a different looking movie than the semi-realistic copy and paste job from all other films. And that's the problem Pixar is facing currently. Where they were once the trailblazers in the game, they turned into a studio with no soul. Pixar used to stand out and be innovative, and now look at it.
Spitting 100K on my...
That damn smile.
And I like Disney PIXAR. I went to Disneyland when I was little, and I grew up wanting to fall asleep at the wheel, like Mac from Cars. Or on a real one, like Dash from The Incredibles. That scene where he's on the water still gives me goosebumps as a 20-year-old now, and definitely played a huge role in getting me into sprinting and running as a kid. But Pixar is now starting to get incredibly lazy, and becoming indistinguishable from animated Disney films like Encanto and Frozen. Like, what's the difference between how that looks, which is Disney, Pixar's turning red? Like, where's the identity? And even after consistently disappointing fans over and over again with mid-ass movies and relying on already existing classics to carry their coffin, their newest film, Elemental, is the biggest example of a complete and utter failure to adapt and survive in the current market. Like little baby turtles on the shore, trying to make its way into the ocean, the box office awaits patiently to strike. While Sony just made $600 million off the sequel to Spider-Verse, Elemental opened with a record low of $30 million, and have only made $195 million as I'm writing this. And with their budget being $200 million, they're down $5 million, with the film almost being out for a month now. If Pixar wants to succeed again, and, you know, I imagine it does, instead of making shit movies and forging tweets where you pretend that the cinema gives a shit about, what's his name, like Little Gronk, or what? I don't give a shit what his name is. The whole cinema, when Pixar puts a bullet through its director. I'm joking. Wise up and get with the time. I'm sure the comic 2D swamp will dry up eventually, but for now, cash in while you can, and capitalize on a wave of animation that has been getting glazed more than my precious Labubu bear. Oh, and let me be clear, Pixar wouldn't even be in this mess if it didn't stop releasing movies at will on Disney Plus, which started to disconnect people that still went to the cinema.
Dad, we can't see the movie.
I can't believe we're paying to see something we get on TV for free.
With the average price of a cinematic experience, you know, dudes just eating popcorn throughout the entire showing, it's no surprise why people aren't turning out to Pixar movies and specifically the cinema. You've got £20 and you're deciding what movies to watch. Are you going to watch Elemental, a film about Fireboy and Water Girl trying to hit? Or would you rather wait and go watch Across the Spider-Verse? And better yet, rob your local off-license for a bottle of whiskey and go watch I mean Oppenheimer. One of the beautiful things Sony was able to do with Spider-Verse was make me enjoy the cinema experience that had been lacking for years. I only really turn up to the cinema for Marvel films now, as it's something my girlfriend enjoys, and it's an activity which requires her not to talk for 2 hours. Guardians of the Galaxy certainly helped with my awful trips to the cinema, but I went to watch that in Stoke-on-Trent, of all places. It was probably the worst cinema of all time, so I can't call it magical.
What is this shit?
When I was there 2 weeks ago watching Across the Spider-Verse for the first time, I felt like what it was like to be a kid again, where my dad would take me and my brother to watch those same heroes all those years ago. There's a clear problem with cinemas at the moment, pricing being a huge one of course, because whilst our government are playing Mr. Monopoly with our livelihood, companies like the Odeon are still charging £1,000 for one popcorn kernel. But if the movies that came out were better, then people will return to the cinema, because Across the Spider-Verse proved that to me. In a couple of weeks, Oppenheimer and Barbie is going to come out, and I'm going to go watch those movies on the same day, the way God intended. Oppenheimer first with a cigarette and coffee, and Barbie later with a vibrator and a cocktail. So yeah, thank you Spider-Verse for that, and Sony, and to Phil Lord and Chris Miller for creating something really special. It means a lot to start enjoying the cinema again. With that being said, I'm going to go watch a bunch of old Pixar movies and start crying it up, because I'm not the same kid anymore.